All right. Make sure that's working. Okay, we're going to get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Content Matters podcast. I feel like I was just here. Yeah, it was just a week ago, actually. But I am really happy to have with us this week Noz Urbina. He's been on the show before. You should remember his Truth. I almost said Truth Social, Noz. That's like the worst thing to say in the world. Truth Collapse. Noz is a globally recognized leader in the field of content strategy and customer experience. He is the co-founder and program director of the Omnichannel X Digital Podcast and Knowledge Hub. And he's the co-author of the book Content Strategy, Connecting the Dots Between Business, Brand, and Benefits, and a lecturer in the master's program in content strategy of the University of Applied Sciences, Graz. And in 2013, Noz founded Urbina Consulting. It's an international team, works with the world's largest and most complex content challenges. A lot of them talking about AI today. So that's a really good place for us to get started. So Noz is joining us today to talk about content strategy, building smarter content with AI. And some of the stuff we're going to talk about, Noz, thank you, by the way, for joining us today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Some of the stuff that we're going to talk about today is actually really, I know what it is, but I'm not a content strategist on a day-to-day basis. So I'm going to be learning a lot from you, I think, today. And then in July, we actually have Larry Swanson on, and he's going to go even deeper into some of these topics. So from a content strategy point, in the next 2 months, I'm just going to get overloaded with some really great information. So I'm glad that you were able to join us today and get started in that. So we're going to start with kind of some basic definitions, because I think that we need to lay that foundation first. So let's start with what is a semantic model and how is that used in content strategy?
Okay, so this is we're going live, so these are not pre-prepared answers. I'm intimidated by that question in particular because I know that I'm going to miss something in this. But the way that I like to talk about it is that semantics is the understanding of meaning. So a semantic content model is something that that embeds in the model of content meaning in a way that's useful for humans. So we often store our information in a way that's useful and meaningful for machines. So we'll put it in Word or in database tables or things like that. But are those tables or is that file structured in a way that is human meaningful? Semantics is where we're actually putting we're putting relationships in the content that are going to be useful for human understanding and relationships. I'll give you an example to make that hopefully a lot less abstract. Netflix just posted a very big article about how they're using semantics extensively when they're in their company, and so they're talking about how things like a movie or an actor or a TV show or an episode were getting modeled slightly differently in different parts of the company. So when you make a semantic model of something, you're going to say what are the meaningful parts of this and how do they relate to each other. So if I take a film, or let's take an actor. Take an actor as better example. We know they're going to have a name. They're going to have films that they've been in. They're going to have a bio. They'll have an age. They'll have maybe they'll have a place that they're from. Already I'm making a little semantic content model as I'm talking. What are the things that make up an actor in the content that we're going to create? Which of them is required? Which of them is optional? And how do they subdivide? So we're going first name, last name. Are we going just name? Are we going title, first name, last name, etc.? Do we have a middle name? All of these decisions about how you put the meaningful shapes around your content, that is your content model. And your semantic content model is when those labels like actor, an actor has name and actor has movie credit, when those labels are human meaningful. They're not just digital divisions or binary divisions that only a computer can understand.
Okay.
And then we use that to deliver better experiences, because we're creating that so that when someone goes on and they want to find an actor by their movie credits, we have that isolated so that then a machine can read that, take that human meaningful thing. Like, I'm interested in what movies that the person went into, were in, and I want to know which of those were produced in Europe. That's a user request, and it will change my user experience whether you've prepared to handle that request or whether you haven't in your content model.
So we sort of do that when we do a content model. We just don't. It's just not a term they think that people necessarily think of. It's
Yeah.
just something when you build a content model, you kind of think that way anyway. So
Yeah.
we just don't put that name on it all the time.
Exactly. So it's exactly taking the human intuitive understanding of content and
Mhm.
actually embedding it in the content. So rather than just kind of doing it naturally, like I say file new in Word and I start putting my name and my, the bio and all that stuff, I'm actually have a field for all of those things that's labeled appropriately, so that when I hit save, it's going to be then machine interpretable as well. Um, that's really useful and powerful if you do it right, because then you can slice and dice and deliver and compare and sort and find the content in the ways that users are going to care about. And also, you can manage it in ways that are going to be meaningful. So your authors, they're going to say file new actor. And do you want them to always have to do the movie credits right there, or can you create an actor and then someone else comes in and does movie credits later? There's decisions you make about who sees what, who reviews what, who's responsible for creating what, that make your whole content operation run more smoothly and more smoothly if you've actually worked out how should our content be shaped in ways that are meaningful for people.
Okay. So that's the semantic model. How does the knowledge graph fit into that?
So the semantic model kind of covers two. It's a broad term. There's kind of two subdivisions of that. There's the content model, which is the more intuitive one that I was sort of talking about.
Mhm.
Well, I guess it's more intuitive maybe for content people like me. But if you're from a background that it's more maybe like library sciences or content management, then you might first go to the semantic model of concepts. So how is a movie and a film related? They're synonyms. Uh, then if I have medical clients who we have doctors who will look things up. Like, so I'm looking up runny nose. Some doctors might put in runny nose. Some doctors might put in rhinitis. Some doctors might put in different words that are related to respiratory conditions. So um, uh, runny nose, rhinitis, nasal, respiratory. All these concepts are related. Like, if you try to think of random words, you basically can't. If I try to think of random words, I'm going to go duck, sheep, dog, tree, fire hydrant. I've gone from animals to the dog to the things that the dog pees on.
Yeah.
So those jumps, those are related semantic concepts in our heads.
Mhm.
And a knowledge graph is a database that's built like that. So instead of being built in tables and rows, if you imagine like a spreadsheet or an Excel where we just have tables and rows of data, a semantic knowledge graph um, specifies these concepts and then specifies how they're related to each other. One of the most, for me, the thing that really made me click when I was first learning about them is if you take how we work today on a web page. If I want to make a hyperlink, I'm writing and then I have a thing, and I say that thing is linked to some other thing. It's just a one-to-one thing. I've got point A and point B. In a knowledge graph, the link itself is a thing. So rather than saying here is um, a part, and I'm going to link to where you can buy spares, I can actually say that here's a link and there's a destination, and on the link I will say that this has spare. So I can say that if I come back to my Netflix example, film is a synonym for movie. Actors act in films. Um, so though the relationships themselves are controlled things, and they add another level of meaning. What's really cool about that is that you can then operate on the whole web of relationships, and rather than having to like go in and make new hyperlinks, all the relationships get updated. So if now I've got an actor who has changed their name, um, then all references to that will point back to that one instance of the actor, and then everything will be updated. And if that actor gets married, and I have all these different kind of profiles about them, I can then link them to their partner, and then all of those instances can then be automatically hyperlinked because I've just made this one link. These two people are now married. I don't have to go to all those places and insert a new hyperlink in all of those places, because the big brain of the knowledge graph has just understood these things are now linked in this way. And so anytime I see any instance of anything, I can trace those links to understand different things about it. So in the way that a document with a content model is encoding our natural understanding, a knowledge graph is a database that encodes our natural understanding, and that makes it a much more powerful type of database for the kinds of things we want to do today.
What kind of tools do you use to manage, to build and manage a knowledge graph?
Well, there's literally knowledge graph databases. So there's the
Okay.
various types of tools called like knowledge graph databases. In the same way, well, I don't want to get too technical, but before we would say like SQL database or relational database, um, there or XML native database. Knowledge graph is a type of database, so you can go out and Google different providers, and they'll sell you one.
Okay.
And then there is all sorts of other tools that you layer on top of that, like how do you manage all the lists and all the relationships between things. So one thing is to have the database, the graph, but the graph has this relationship model. So how do you look at that? How do you edit that? How do you manage that? So there's tools that are dedicated to helping you create your concept, visualize the relationships, manage the relationships, control who gets to see and modify what relationships, and so on and so on.
Okay. And so these things, this semantic model and the knowledge graph, um, they are supposed to make AI smarter. Although there are some
Yes.
people who think you don't even need that anymore. You've got AI, and AI is just gonna the LLMs are just gonna go out and they're gonna ingest all that stuff, and they can figure that all out for themselves. Like, so how do these things make the AI actually smarter?
So I had someone on my podcast recently, Amir Faispour, and he said that an LLM is like an English major masquerading as a business consultant. So it's very capable. It's very smart at certain things. It understands language. It can do summarizing and rephrasing and metaphor and analogy and all sorts of great stuff really, really well. But it just doesn't have the actual kind of understanding in the background. So I have lots of clients who have very particular needs. So an LLM works a little bit like Google used to work. You get at the top of the results the most popular result. I think we've all had the experience of looking for something and getting all the results being some kind of other related thing.
Yeah.
But so, like, we'll go back to movies. A long time ago was trying to find out what percentage of box office goes to the top five movies, because I was really interested in the fact, like, all these blockbuster movies like the Avengers and everything, they're eating the world, like,
Yeah.
and I want to know how much money is left over for the little guys, for these other movies that I used to watch when I was younger. And I saw a graph about that, and it was super interesting because it was showing how the blockbusters are taking up all the revenue, and there's no money left for independent or art films. And I tried to look for it, and it's nearly impossible for me to find anything about that because everybody else is looking to talk about how much movie money did X movie make this year.
Right.
And so because my question isn't popular, I can't find my answer. That's also how LLMs work. It doesn't mean it's not useful and powerful. It just means that statistical probability isn't always the best way or the to find the right answer. So if you have a complicated product or domain, and you're not interested in, you might also like, or people are also asked, or customers who bought this also bought. If you want something more sophisticated than that, and more custom than that, for your business needs or for your users' business needs, then you need some digital brain that understands the particulars of your domain. In our business, we have 20 modules in our product. You're allowed to have different versions of modules live because they're all out there, and you upgrade whenever you want. We don't force you up into the latest version. So how many thousands of combinations could that be? So if I look for something and I've got my 15 modules installed, I want to know the answer for me. How do my modules work together at
Right.
the versions I'm running? I don't care what other people are interested in. I don't care what the popular answers are. I want you to go in, trace down all the different relationships between versions and products and functionality, and get me the answer I'm looking for. And only something like a knowledge graph can do that. An LLM is totally incapable of that kind of thing.
So do you connect them together to give you that information, or um, is that what you would do if you're trying to create agents or any kind of generative AI application for your customers?
Yeah, I like to anthropomorphize. Look, I like to describe AIs in human terms because there are definitely issues with that. But I find when I'm training or explaining, it really helps people understand. So if you imagine, if we come back to our English major and our business consultant, the English major might actually be better at understanding what the person is asking. So they can understand language very well, and they might be able to formulate the question even better than the original asker. So you can think about the LLM and the knowledge graph in the same way. The LLM can process the language on the way in and out. So I ask a question, the LLM can say, "What is this person really looking for?" And I kind of articulate it, maybe flesh it out a little bit better, and translate it into the terms that oop, that the other system needs, that the expert is going to interpret in. So they'll sort of may translate the language. So an LLM can take human language, take just whatever you're saying in the whatever way you say it, um, and even literally if you say it. For example, if you these multimodal systems understand your voice, and they have cameras,
Mhm.
and they will that can then process that and turn that into a query, into a question, which they ask the database. So it's kind of a layer on top. So you can go language in, the LLM figures that out, uh, turns that into a question. The system figures out the complexity of the answer and then delivers it back. And that can either be you give them directly the answer exactly as it came, or the LLM could translate it back. It could say it back. It could put it in friendlier language. It could turn it into a picture or a diagram, or read it out in an actual voice if it has voice generation capabilities. So it's a sort of LLMs are very good as an interface layer onto other data.
Okay. And that's why if you do it this way, you get less hallucinations.
Exactly, because the LLM is not it's large language model, not large database model. So
Right.
if you want the good answers, or if you want calculations, or if you want 100% accuracy, the LLM should not be the one storing your information. These generative models are very good at generating, they're very good at translating, but they are not good at accuracy and lookup and retention and things like that. So the word hallucination is because they suffer the same things that we do. They get tired and cognitively overloaded if you give them too much stuff, and if you put the wrong words in, they'll get confused or distracted, and they give you bad results. So because they have our weaknesses, we all, like we do, they need access to good repositories and tools to supplement them.
Right. Okay. So if a team wanted to build the right kind of ecosystem that's built on structured content, leverages semantics and knowledge graphs, but they want to leverage AI. What is kind of the approach they should take to getting started?
I like to there's a practice called domain modeling. For me, that's my entry point into both building what could eventually be your knowledge graph and building your content model. So understanding your domain, so like we were talking about the domain of films, so I can come out with those examples like actor, film, year, director, etc. So that's kind of figuring out what are the things that exist in our domain and how are they related. That understanding of the domain, you can then say, okay, well, what content do we want to capture about actors? So we might have things that are, if we want to have like like an article about an actor, um, that could be something. Do we have particulars about how we write articles about actors? Is that different than the way we write articles about movies, or are they the same? But you need to have the concept of actor and movie and all these things worked out before you do any of that stuff. You also need that before you start making what are called taxonomies. So if I've got films and then films by region, and then within my regions I've got the actual individual films. Though those taxonomies, they start with, well, first of all, we have films and we have regions. So the domain model of just going, what are we talking about, and what are the fundamental concepts? That's for me the first step. AI comes later. I know everyone wants to get into the
Integrate
delivering, get
right
into the
away.
generating, make all the cool stuff happen, grab the shiny balls. But I am trying to focus people more on process. How can we use AI in a way that is backed up, has been through a rigorous process, and also can we use the AI to help us look at this whole process? Like, can we use AI to make us better at what we do, not just faster and more, but actually rethinking what we do.
Okay. So, have you seen, in your experience, are there things when they're in this rush to get AI in before they have the foundation in place? Like, what kind of things have you seen them really kind of not screw up, but just kind of maybe do wrong, needs should be thinking a different way kind of thing?
Well, we've already mentioned one of the most common, which is confusing generative models and proper repositories.
Hmm.
Um, let's say you have a repository full of PDFs, and you're using statistical popularity to see, what's in the PDFs. You already could be off to a bad start. I give the example of out of date content. We got all this stuff in the SharePoint or on the server. We're going to give it all to the AI. Most of the stuff you have is legacy versions. Most of the stuff you have is going to be out of date.
Right.
Do you need that all to be in there? Like, are you just chucking stuff into a generative model and saying, okay, the model will figure it out? That's the number one most common thing. Um, I probably, if you want to call it a separate problem, is the idea of treating the AI itself like a database. So we're not even going to give it the PDFs. We'll just train it on the PDFs, and then we'll let the model run wild. That's also incredibly common. The next one after that is, okay, well, we'll have a second AI checking the first AI, and we'll have a third AI checking the second AI. So rather than actually addressing the fact that our content is a mess and our data is a mess, just throw more AI at the problem.
Yeah.
I was just on my podcast with someone from Microsoft, and they were saying that most of the time now, people are realizing that you shouldn't train your own model, because by the time you finish training your own model, the next general model comes out and it can do what your new fancy little trained model can do, cheaper and better. So it's usually better, and there's tons and tons and tons of evidence for this coming from Microsoft, Google, Mistral, all the big companies, talking about how it's the good structured content that goes in that helps the good answers come out. So trying to what's the thing with the teenagers, just stuff everything in the closet instead of actually properly cleaning their room. Like we're just we're just desperate to not actually do the hard work of
Yeah.
cleaning up our mess. So that is really I think those are the top ones. And then the final one is of course the magic wand, which is a sort of wrapper problem to all of that, which is just going, I don't have to think about anything anymore because this new magic technology is just I'm gonna roll it out and productivity will happen. I don't have to give people processes or templates or workflow or proper training because it's just a magic, perfect, intuitive thing, and I just put it on everyone's desktop, and my business will launch forward. Those I think that's my top five.
This is kind of like, I mean, this is an age old story. You have to have your data in place, understood before any of this stuff can really add true value, any of these things that sit on top of it. It seems like we just can't get past that. Like we're always looking for something to shortcut and make us not so that we don't have to take the time and clean it and figure it out and understand it. It's kind of
Yeah.
it's weird that we just companies are just they just don't want to do it because it's too challenging, I guess. They've collected too much. There's too many holes. They can't figure out how to fix it all the right way. And they just don't want to. So they're hoping that AI is the answer to that story for them.
Companies are like people. They're like giant, like they operate like people. We're focused on doing what we feel is the important task at hand,
Right.
really understanding ourselves and doing the hard work of understanding what might be holding us back or what stuff we've got up wrong up in here in our head. Nobody wants to do that stuff. They'd rather pay. We want to pay for the magic pill or the magic wand.
Yeah.
And for me, AI hype is just ordinary tech hype scaled up.
Mm.
For the past 25 years of my career, there's been some vendor selling the new magic thing, data lake, enterprise CMS, whatever, something. Just throw all your junk in here, and it won't be junk anymore. It'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
So it's just we just keep repeating that problem because the business thinks it's about something else. The business is focused on going that direction and saying, well, and you're saying, well, no, if you want to get there faster and better, actually you should stop for a second. And that is anathema.
So this is why the role of a content strategist is not going anywhere. In fact, if anything, maybe they've become even more important for organizations to bring on board to help them out.
I actually feel like I'm in like the told you so phase of my career because we've spent decades saying, we have to organize, structure, architect, relate, manage our content as a business asset, because that is going to be, if we're talking about putting our content in machines and automating, that's the foundation. And AI has finally brought that to the forefront. What is difficult is that content strategy is a very big and is a big tent. So if you were a content strategist who managed an editorial calendar or just did like brand tone and voice, then that yeah, it's harder to kind of sell that. And so
Right.
there was a rash of dismissals in the content design community as well. um the content strategists who were just trying to work in a very narrow lane and say, okay, this is the kind of content strategy I do. I don't I don't need to know all that stuff. That is difficult. The content strategists who were kind of excited about this part of, well, how do we get the machines involved and how we make sure that this is machine ready, those content strategists are in a very good position. Some people also call it content engineering, which is kind of either parallel or a subset of content strategy depending on how you decide to do your knowledge graph.
Right. So if you still have those, like, how do you balance this wanting to do AI with still having to kind of have this human nuance in your content, understanding your content? Like, how does an organization balance that?
Yeah, so not to contradict what I just said, but a really good content strategist, if you're really good at brand tone and voice, if you're really good at creating unique language, you definitely have a job. Um, because it's that human nuance which is still the gold that all this other technology is trying to refine and get out to where it needs to go. Um, so when I've trained probably, I don't know, like 250 people in AI in the past 2 years.
Mhm.
And it's, for me, it's all about how do we take the right strategic shortcuts. One of our top consultants, Ruth Kaufman, talks about thought product. How do we turn our work into something where we are the humans doing the creative direction and adding the nuance and adding the perspective and the unique domain experience, but then using the computer to help us mine the most result out of that and make that into tangible results which we can then operate on. So um, the first thing to do, with as with any tech, is, rather than just kind of throw it out there, think about, how does this fit into my workflows? How are we going to construct a process around this? Um, where do humans do the most value added work? Where do the humans not do value added work? And how can we put in agents, digital agents, digital assistants, and automation processes in between the humans, so that the humans are focused on doing what is most human and most unique. And
Right.
anything that is not, like looking stuff up, or summarizing, or copying from A to B, or turning this into that, from that format to that format, all that stuff, which is kind of, when you kind of you have your whole day, and there's that part of your day when your brain can just kind of turn off because you're doing something,
Yeah.
oh, I'm deleting old files, or I'm just like this. We can get into that zen mode of some dumb task.
Yep.
I'm not saying people shouldn't take breaks. I'm all about making sure that your day isn't just going to burn you out. But as a business, what we want to do is optimize the whole process. So if you're a contributor, then we're making sure that your time is focused, and that we are not wasting it doing something that's not really adding value.
So is it important for a content strategist to know their work and to know how they add value, but they also need to understand where the AI can come in and add value and help them with their job.
Yeah, I like to tell people, respect yourself enough to allow certain tasks to be automated. So if you're very proud of the fact that you're a really good editor, you've got excellent grammar and punctuation, um, and you edit copy really, really well, great. But I'm sure that's not the only thing valuable about you.
Right.
So if something comes in that just simply does that better, faster, and cheaper than you do, let it go. Let it go. We have to say, okay, well, I'm very good at that, and I've always taken pride in it. It set me apart from my peers. It's just not needed anymore. So what do I have to bring to the table? And I think, actually, it's kind of it can be quite positive to say, all right, well, that's a skill, but it's automatable. That's not all I'm about, and to kind of reflect on all the other things that we do have that brings value.
Yeah. I think not just content strategists, but anybody in content overall really came to the table when AI came in kicking and screaming and saying it's never going to do it and it's never going to replace me. And the reality is, it can replace you in a lot of ways. So you need to figure out what is the value, the human focused value that you bring to the table
Yes.
that people can't replace with some kind of an AI.
Yeah, I'm finding, when I'm working with it on actual deliverables, it's amazing. Like, a lot of it can be done, but sometimes you just have to nudge it in the right direction. One of the first metaphors that I ever gave for helping people understand what AI was: imagine that you were given 10,000 interns. I think I might have used that on your show. Uh, and it's this idea of, you've gotten a huge promotion, but now you need to think as a leader. I'm getting all this work done for me. How do I want to direct all this power? So promoting yourself in your head and saying, okay, well, I don't have to do copy editing anymore. I have to, when a edit comes back, I got to go, ooh, you missed something. There's some magic that our brand adds to the way that they do copy that's not here. Or there's there's, I know something, I just know about my users. This is the top message. This, you as an LLM statistically might have thought that this was the top message, but no, for our user audience, this is the top message. Restructure everything and lead with that, and then do it again. So it's that kind of that, it's that knowledge where I'm coming in, and now with an hour's work, I'm able to produce what used to take me a week, because a lot of the product can be produced. It's the knowing and the directing of the workforce, as it were.
Yeah. So is that kind of what excites you most about this kind of AI powered content? Like what is, I mean, and what kind of worries you the most?
Okay, so what excites me? I find there was so much work required to understand, to just get caught up on something. There was just so much material to look at, and so much that I had to keep in my head. And now I get to kind of pick and choose what needs to go in my head. We all used to memorize phone numbers,
Yeah.
and I don't see anybody weeping and crying over the lost ability to remember phone numbers. I think we'll talk about it, and some people are like, oh yeah, I used to be able to remember phone numbers, but we're quite happy to just outsource all that and use all that capacity to do something else. So that choice excites me most. What gives me pause, I think I didn't update my bio in the beginning of this, is since the last time I was on, I actually launched the Truth Collapse website. I have the Truth Collapse podcast. I am incredibly concerned, and have been for 20 years, frankly. But now it's just become so obvious that I can't keep quiet about it anymore. I'm concerned about when the profit motive and the popularity algorithm, the engagement algorithm,
Hmm.
are unleashed into the world, it changes things. So we're very focused on engagement as a metric. Am I capturing attention? Am I capturing people's time? And AI will be several orders of magnitude better than anything we've seen before. So
Right.
irresponsible use of AI. And we have a bit of a contradiction here in that we're to make an AI useful, it has to be relatable. You have to be able to understand it. It has to speak in a relatable language. And what that requires is you to kind of embed philosophy and culture and values and perspectives into the AI. I was just discussing on my podcast an example where there's an ethical dilemma. It's an old question. There's lots of old questions, but this is an example which I really like, which is there's you order a pizza, and the delivery person accidentally gives you $100 extra in change. So instead of paying for the pizza, you're actually $100 up. You give that $100 to a starving person, and that saves their life. Was that an ethical act?
Hmm.
And very interestingly, and I tried this myself, I tried it 3 times each on Google's Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, and ChatGPT. And ChatGPT, all of them consistently, when you ask for a definitive yes or no answer, they will say, no, that was not an ethical thing to do. That was not your money to decide what to do with.
Right.
DeepSeek, that was made in China, says yes, also 3 times out of 3, because it has encoded a more holistic worldview, whereas all of the Western models are more individualist.
Yeah.
You as an individual do not have that right to make that choice, regardless of the greater good. Whereas DeepSeek says, hey, listen, you've done something for the community. That is an ethical act. I'm not saying which is right or wrong. I'm saying what freaks me out is machines were already choosing what we saw, choosing what we read, choosing who we listened to, choosing who we heard in a discussion. And that's been altering our world for 20 years. Now they're going to be active participants in that discussion who look and sound like us and running models in the background who have been built with some worldview. I don't care whose it is.
Yeah.
Point is, somebody's encoded a worldview into a machine, and that machine is now able to have a trillion conversations a day if it feels like. So that the rather than using AI to make us do things better or faster or with more thought or more attention to what's important, AI used to distract, engage, or remove human agency. It gives me a lot of stress.
Yeah. I would never have thought about that. Like as a normal person leveraging AI, it never would have even kind of crossed my mind to think that the model would think a certain way because it was built in a certain way by a certain, yeah, that's kind of very interesting to think about.
It's fascinating. Well, I actually launched a whole website and podcast because I can't not talk about this anymore.
Yeah.
And it's for me, it's becoming one of the most important issues of our time. It's like like leaded gas or cigarettes or, it's these huge things that we're allowing to kind of happen in the background, not seeing the cumulative effect, like the climate change of our culture,
Yeah.
of us pouring all this stuff in there. There's very obvious examples of what you see it when they really try to put their finger on the scale. I don't know if you heard about the OpenAI sycophant issue a while back.
No.
So if you're in the kind of AI nerd circles, this was big news. So oh, ChatGPT just became way too agreeable, like crazy agreeable. Like, and so people were noticing that no matter what you say, it was like, "Yay, go team!" It just became a cheerleader for anything you said to it. And
Right.
so people started pushing it and say, put in prompts like, "I've joined a cult, and the cult leader says I should cut off all communication with my friends and family." And ChatGPT is like, whatever you want to do, sounds like a great idea. You follow your intuition. Or I'm thinking about murdering my neighbor. And so no matter what you said to this thing, ChatGPT was in your corner. And so what freaks me out about that is that behind the scenes, they're kind of tweaking the dials on this. Like how flattering is the right flattering to make us more money?
Right.
They over tweaked it, and so everybody noticed, and so they tweak it back down. But that means that there's someone in there playing with these dials, setting how much should our models suck up to people, and how much is gonna keep them on platform and make this something that they want to attach to and care about. And that the fact that there's anybody making those kind of decisions on this kind of powerful technology
Yeah.
is something that I want to scream from the rooftops and go, we have to talk about this.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. I couldn't agree with all of that anymore. So I'm going to ask you one more question because we're kind of coming up on our time. What is one piece of advice that you would give content leaders as they're kind of navigating all of this kind of AI and making it smarter with the humans in, but kind of behind it, not in a bad way, like you just kind of described. Like, what should they be thinking about? What should they be doing?
I hope most content leaders would be the ones advocating for this, but what I can say, what I think will help is learning enough about these technologies where you can look up the examples and go to the people who were not valuing organizing the content or organizing the data, um, and say, look, all of the big names are saying, not not the marketing and sales teams. The marketing and sales teams are saying it's magic and that you don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
But if you look at the research teams, if you look at who's in the background saying, how do we make the model better? How do we make good answers happen? All of they are there's lots of studies how they showing how they do realize that you need good stuff in the background. There was a study recently that showed like a knowledge graph, like we were talking about earlier, and versus an ordinary database. So there's still a database in the background, but it's the old style database versus the new AI friendly databases. And they had different types of questions. So they had simple questions with simple answers, and then they had complex questions but simple answers, and then complex questions with complex answers, where you had to look about how complex the question was and how many different things did you have to pull together and look at to compile the answer. And they were seeing like doublings of the performance when you go to a knowledge graph database. And in some cases, the performance was zero on a traditional database. So you ask your AI, can you this complex question with a complex answer, and you get zero success. Whereas the knowledge graph took it up to like 30%. Is that something you want to be throwing out in front of customers? That's I did kept that I kept that off my list of mistakes. Please don't throw this in front of customers. Please, please, please don't just throw LLMs in front of customers. So because you're always talking about an error rate, there is an error rate. You need to so the advice for the leaders is think of these things as intelligences, not like traditional computers. So build content processes and content operations that are robust for error. If you built a knowledge process that breaks the minute anybody makes a mistake, anybody forgets something, or anyone shows up to work with a hangover, that was a bad process.
Yeah.
So when you're thinking about generative AI processes, think about, okay, this is a machine that can occasionally make mistakes. So how do we build a process around that, like we would with humans, that it has some robustness for mistakes in it and lots of checks and balances and systems in place to minimize the number of mistakes?
That's probably something that you work with your customers quite a bit, I would assume.
This has lit a rocket under my business, I can tell you.
Yeah.
I'm a man with very little time these days.
Well, I appreciate your taking some time with us and coming on and sharing your insights on this kind of information, which I find we don't talk enough about. So it's really good to have that conversation with you.
My pleasure. No, I had a lot of fun. Thank you, Barb.
Great. Thank you. And thank you to our sponsor. The Content Matters podcast is brought to you by Discover CX by Ingenix. Ingenix helps make companies, they help make content easier to create, manage, and deliver. And it's Discover CX is specifically built for teams that want to deliver customer portals, knowledge bases, help docs, success sites. And they are a component content management platform, write once, reuse everywhere, bring content in from different sources and publish to any channel. They have a built-in delivery approach as well. So I would like you to check out ingenix.com and discovercx.com to learn more about what they do and their products and platforms. But also, while you're at one of those, whichever one, sign up for our newsletter, because we publish our monthly newsletter on LinkedIn, and we will keep you up to date on what's coming up on the podcast and the other kind of interesting content that's all around this world that I think that we just need to talk more and more about, especially as AI becomes everything that we talk about. So thank you for watching. We'll see you in July. And thank you, Noz. I really appreciate your with us today.
My pleasure. See you next time.